Recording?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Popsicles. Icicles. Test.
You don't need to do
Testing.
that.
I know, but the joke is that if you followed on that line, you'd say testicles.
Oh.
Icicles.
Right.
Popsicles. Testing.
About testicles.
I first heard that at a summer camp, actually, when I was like 9. But kids like even younger than me there. And I was like, oh my God, where's he going with... Oh, okay. Anyways, hey there, folks. This is the BS Buddies, tuning in from lovely, sunny San Diego, which, for those of you who don't know, actually means the whale's vagina in Spanish.
Who said that?
It was Ron Burgundy.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it was from. Okay.
In terms of like shitty, like kind of modern, not slapstick, but you know, like that kind of genre of just like really heinous, off the wall kind of humor.
Yeah.
I feel like that was one of the last movies that I really enjoyed.
That was the last movie that Will Ferrell ever did. Actually, I would say the last thing that Will Ferrell ever did that I enjoyed.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're here, and we're kind of thinking that we talk about femininity, masculinity, specifically of the toxic variety, and just kind of to what extent gender is a social construct, which is something that you tend to hear a lot in the wake of the ongoing national trans discussion. But I don't even really feel like we have to relate it to
Well, I don't think it's a trans discussion.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Is I feel like it's coming up more often because of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to.
Have you heard
really
the term trans trenders?
No.
So it's people who are jumping on the trans bandwagon because it's popular.
Oh, that I could totally
Yeah,
see.
so
you mean you don't mean actually becoming trans? You just mean
No,
I've actually heard that
Yeah.
for most trans people don't really give a fuck. They just want to be left alone and be able to live their life. That like most of the people prompting this discussion in the national or in the public sphere for the sake of kind of bringing up those kind of issues are not trans people.
Yeah,
There's
they're
a
trans
few-
trenders.
Yeah, it's a cool
Yeah.
term for it. I hadn't heard it though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know 2 trans people. One I know very well. The other one I don't know so well.
But a lot of them aren't like trans activists, right?
They're just people.
They're just people.
They're just people trying to figure shit out.
I feel like this is like almost like thrusting them into the spotlight like this.
I
It
think
must
it's
just be so fucking frustrating for a lot of them.
I think it's thrusting them into the spotlight. I also think it's helped one of them figure out what they felt, but didn't know what they felt because there was a spotlight on it. But there are people who want to consider, like, gender fluid. Like that's not trans. That's what, like, you some days feel like a man, you some days feel like a woman. I mean,
Well, I don't think that's
what?
I don't think that's what gender fluidity means. It means you're
not strictly one thing or the other.
you're not bound to.
Sorry, I
one
put
thing or
it
the other.
I put it too simplistically, but
yeah, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you like wake up feeling like different genders every fucking
Right.
day of the week. It just means that you shouldn't be restricted to your one, kind of the
pronoun.
whatever society kind of typically thinks that a man should act like. But without trying to touch on the trans issue too much, I think one thing that's been of great benefit is kind of questioning to what extent is it really just as simple as it's a social construct? I mean, one thing that they'll say is like it's not the gender you were assigned at birth. Like the doctor just pulled you out and said, "Well, I'm feeling like this one's gonna be a girl, so let's just fucking call it a girl." Or did they actually look at the presence of a vagina indicating the presence of certain chromosomes and DNA and hormones? And again, this sounds like we're kind of talking about trans, but this applies to just people, not non-trans people in general. How are we expected to act in terms of being feminine because you're a woman, being masculine because you're a man?
Right.
Recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just double checking.
Yeah. We had a traumatic incident,
Yeah.
folks. We lost about
2 hours.
2 hours of audio.
Yeah.
Still a sore subject. Anyways, so yeah, maybe I'm kind of interested to see what you have to think about that, and I definitely have some opinions, but
I think first of all, defining what do you mean by social construct? That means, to put it in traditional terms, the woman is the childbearer, the man is the one out, like, doing all the work.
Well, those are what
work,
we
rather
have quote unquote constructed, but to define gender construct, I think would be useful to this conversation. Like, gender construct itself means it's a socially constructed phenomenon that doesn't really have anything to do with biology or our hormones or our DNA or anything. That this is just, it might be long standing, but it's just something that the people have kind of decided.
It's a social construct in the sense that it is not necessarily an aspect of your biology, but is deeply rooted in your biology. So you can have an effeminate man who's still a man. He's biologically a man, but he's very womanly. But that's kind of fringe, This, I think, gay population. Not that all gay men are effeminate, but that's certainly where, if you wanted to find an effeminate man, you'd probably start looking. Is 10%, and then you have some straight men who are very effeminate, which is I don't know the percentage on that, but it's deeply rooted in biology.
I feel like
it's not
growing.
A cause of your biology.
Like whatever
it's
the
growing.
percentage is, it's growing.
Well, you can also see that too with the way that men are being feminized in school.
Yeah.
Where you do have a lot of more effeminate guys.
Oh, dude, this is actually totally falling back on the trans issue, which we would hope not to do. But I just heard this yesterday, and it's fresh and it's kind of related. But I was listening. So that I guess that there's like a drag book reading group in San Francisco.
Okay.
That just recently moved to
That's
the East
the place
Bay.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah. They just recently moved to the East Bay, so they're doing this stuff in Oakland now, and it's where a drag queen, I guess not trans, but apparently they have trans people. I didn't really research this after hearing it was like a 5-minute piece on NPR. But so this person's they're reading a story to it was like 300 kids about a transgendered 4-year-old.
Oh yeah,
who was called Princess Boy.
Yeah.
And she's like, how many of you are 4-year-old? And all this, and then like the thing that she basically got them all to chant at the end was "We're all princesses." And it was presumably the person reading, the drag person reading this book.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Like the princess being referring to the princess transgender boy that she's talking about in her book.
In her book, okay.
So presumably somewhere around 150 boys were encouraged to chant that they're princesses.
Of about the same age or something like that?
It seemed... I was listening to this on the radio. They said there was over 300 people.
Yeah.
When she asked how many of them were boys, were age 4, it seemed like they got a fairly decent response. So it seemed like it was, I would say, 2 to 10 probably was the group. But yeah, I mean, so they are definitely there's some effort to kind of feminize boys out of traditional masculine behaviors.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that certainly not trans people. I have not heard one thing from an actual like transitioning person from female to male. Let's say you would assume where this would come from, that would say that masculinity is toxic. Not one. But trenders,
because they want to be. I mean,
right.
like
they want to be
somebody who wants
man.
to transition to being a man. They want to have those traits displayed, which means that they see some value in them. And clearly, like, it's not that fluid to the point that it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter what you look like and how you behave, they wouldn't be attempting to emulate those appearances and behaviors.
Yeah, there's a great contradiction in that. Is gender is a social construct, but some people just want to be the archetype of the opposite.
Right, but I think it's funny in that way that this whole conversation on gender identity, gender fluidity, got sparked by the trans discussion when it's arguable that trans people are the least interested in kind of promoting that idea, because if they were, then they wouldn't give a shit. If why would a trans person choose to somebody who transitioned to being a man, why would they choose to stop wearing dresses and start wearing suits if those things are truly just abstract social constructs that don't actually matter?
Or rather, if you're a female to male transition, why would you willingly choose to go into a quote toxic environment? One that would not only hurt you apparently, but everybody around you. And that's the interesting part where that argument kind of eats itself, because you can say, okay, gender is a social construct, and then we have trans people, and at some point their arguments just start to eat themselves.
Well, just contradict themselves.
Yeah,
my main point is that those arguments that you don't generally actually hear being made by trans people, you hear them being made by trans advocates, and it gets.
Oh, sorry. The point I was going to make, I kind of lost it in mid sentence, was, if gender is a social construct and it's a delusion that we're all under, and there's no differences between the sexes, then the people who want to transition, especially, are sick. And because they are under such a delusion that they think transitioning from one end to the other will make their lives better.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing what we said we wouldn't do. I'm actually getting into the trans issue on this.
Well, I mean,
much.
What I'm saying is,
you want to address to what degree it's like mentally ill.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that those people are sick. I think in the same way that somebody, there's so many reasons why somebody can be uncomfortable in their own skin. I have anxiety. And when I have an anxiety attack, I am uncomfortable in my own body, which is a weird thing to say, but I get it.
Anxiety might be tough to compare to mental illness as a...
anxiety is a mental illness.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, it's not schizophrenia, but it's definitely a mental affliction of some kind. And, I mean... we said we weren't going to do this, but we are.
Let's do it.
But if
full dive.
I agree in the same conclusions that most people who are trans advocates do, in terms of they should have rights, they should have respect, they should even be to some extent afforded certain protections as a marginalized minority in our society. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not mentally ill for displaying those traits. I don't feel if you in your brain feel some disassociation between the fact that you have a dick, you have male chromosomes, you have male DNA, you excrete male hormones, but you just feel like you're not any of those things, I don't really see how you can say that kind of extreme. I mean, they do call it a dissociation.
Right.
Yeah, it seems indicative of a mental illness to me, and it might be that the best way that we have to deal with that mental illness is essentially just to go along with it and say, okay, great. Yeah. And chopping off your dick does seem a little extreme to me, but I'm particularly attached to mine, no pun intended. But yes, I mean, maybe the best way is to go along with it. I'm not necessarily saying we should lock them up, and I'm definitely not saying we should be locking people up in mental institutions or pumping them full of antipsychotic drugs. I don't know how that would be best said, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I can differ on that nuance, and I don't feel like it's entirely semantic to do so.
I think if you want to talk about it as a mental illness, it's kind of irrelevant. It certainly seems to be the best way to approach this with any person who has that body dysphoria or gender dysphoria. Is definitely, I think therapy is a valuable thing, and that's not to mean that you're crazy, but just go talk to a professional.
Well, the suicide rates from just being uncomfortable in that situation warrant therapy on their own.
Sure.
But you shouldn't be trying to convince them in that therapy that they're not actually what they think they are.
Right. No, I think just talking about it, getting it out in the open with somebody who is going to be confidential about it. And then from there, you can learn about options. Mm-hmm. And maybe your option is taking hormone therapy and undergoing surgery. If that's the best treatment for you, please do it. But understand the risks. Right. And so,
I think to compare it to to gay people, neither of us would support pray the gay away type therapy.
Oh, hell no.
Where you got to be sat down, 3 times a week for an hour with some therapist who's trying to convince you that you're not gay. But if you experience some level of discomfort from maybe, being gay in a particularly hot, homophobic type area, it would be beneficial for you to be able to sit down with the therapist, maybe even for that same length of time every week, just to talk about that.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I would support therapy for
I
trans people.
mean, I had a psychologist. Yeah, psychologist, not psychiatrist. Psychologist tell me that you go to the doctor to make sure your body's healthy. And even if you're not crazy, you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist to make sure your brain is healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Also a good comparison.
Yeah.
But to kind of bring it back away from the trans issue a little bit, in terms of certain things being a social construct, I mean, we mentioned wearing suits as opposed to dresses. And with most mannerisms that we display, that a typical man displays, that a typical woman displays, or things that they want to accentuate, including up to style of dress, I don't feel like these things are arbitrary. I feel like there's actually a biological reason why. I mean, think of most typical dresses. You're showing some shoulder, you're probably showing some cleavage, you're probably showing some leg. They're typically more form-fitting, so it allows you to see more of the person's figure. Think about a suit.
Real quick.
The V's. Hold on, let me pop this off. I wanted to say this before we even digressed into the trans thing, so let me pop it off. Hold your point. A suit's meant to, the V shape, going down the front of your chest is kind of meant to accentuate wideness of shoulders. That's why there's padding in the shoulders of most suits, because having a broad-shouldered man indicates strength, right? So in both of those, like so men being the stronger of the two genders, their strength having been the way that they protected and provided for families for 99.9% of all human existence, and then women wanting to accentuate certain attractive qualities in their body, which was how they got mates for 99 point. Actually, I would even say 100. I think that continues to present day. Men no longer have to hunt mammoths to provide for their family, but women still have to be attractive to get mates. And both of those behaviors are modeled on biological. They both have a biological basis in what humans are and how we behave and how we interact. And that's why I dislike the idea that people are saying that that's a social construct. Well, that women should wear dresses and shave their legs is only a social construct. It's like not. I mean, it's a way society has kind of chosen to go above and beyond what most animals do to help accentuate those things. But they're things that would have had value in being accentuated for all of human existence.
Right.
So how do you say that it's an arbitrary thing that somebody just made up?
There's one anomaly, I guess, and I only know of the one. It's a tribe where the actual, like, as far as attracting a mate, the roles are completely reversed, where the men put makeup on.
That's about in thongs.
Yeah, they do. They literally they put makeup on. They accentuate the whiteness of their teeth. They get in a line and they dance, and they try to, they're showing their eyes. They open their eyes real wide. They put their teeth out there, and literally the women walk through and just, I would like that one because he's attractive.
Right. Well, it seems like a pretty severe matriarchal based outlier to how most of human existence.
Well, I don't know if they're necessarily matriarchal, but because the men are still the hunters.
Well, that's what I was about to say is, like, okay, let's say they go to war with a neighboring tribe or whatever. I'm assuming this is
I believe it's an African tribe. I believe.
Okay, I just kind of assumed because I wasn't aware of any developed nation that followed that. But apparently,
hey, wait. Africa's not a nation, and there are developed nations in Africa.
Touche and touche. But let's say they have to go to war with a neighboring group of people. Objectively, who's the best person to send? Do you want the person that can actually, like, deadlift carry a fallen person away from combat, or do you want somebody who can't chuck a spear as far, or hold the recoil on a gun as well, or whatever the fuck it is that they're doing? My point is, like, there's also a reason why men are typically the warrior,
right? Because
testosterone makes you more aggressive
and competitive.
Makes you more competitive. Your just general body, I mean, everything from your hormones to just the layout of your body makes you more well suited to those kind of behaviors. So why wouldn't you do that? And that's not. It's not the idea that men fight more often is not a social construct.
Well, I mean, even to break it down to a purely biological standpoint, there's benefits of like you did, like strength, obviously biological, but just the way our bodies are constructed. I know because kind of I really wanted to be in the infantry when I was younger, and so I know a lot of for various reasons I wasn't able, but I know a lot of dudes who were in the infantry. And around the time they started letting women in, especially in special forces, two of my friends are Army Rangers. They do this thing where they go out into the field and they will stay there for 2 weeks to a month and just run exercises. Now the men can stay out there for a month. They don't go back. They don't shower. They smell. They shit. They piss, and they eat, as they put it. The women, every third day, I believe it was, go back, they get on a bus, they go back, and they take a shower. This is strictly to prevent an infection in their
nether regions.
Yes.
Which, with all the profanity on this, dude, you could just...
no, I was going to say...
You could say cunt, and we're not... Stepping too far beyond...
It's weird how you get
already
hung
been
up on
said.
certain words in their poo nanner.
lovely lady parts. Hey, we both love the lady parts.
Yeah.
I love... Yeah, no disrespect.
Sorry, I just kind of thought... Yeah, anyway. So there, right there is a very hard biological difference, right? Like, it's in your face. It's very obvious.
Right.
They have to go back. Otherwise, they might die from a vaginal infection. They have to get clean. Otherwise, they could die. So... that, again, it all roots into biology, and if it is a social construct, it's deeply rooted into the biological differences of us. And it's getting so ridiculous as people saying there's no biological difference between the sexes. What?
Right. Well, and just to continue on that military theme for a while, this military, police force, and fire department, I've heard all of these things happening, but of them basically having to drop the physical requirements specifically for women. So it's like, as a guy, you have to be, I mentioned
the Marines
earlier,
had that too.
You have to be able to, so your buddy gets shot, he's unconscious, you have to be able to drag a 200-pound dude in, an extra 60 pounds of gear, X number of yards, and that's a test you have to be able to do. Women can't do it, so they drop the requirements. Or you have to be able to run a certain amount of distance, or with a certain amount of pack weight, or you have to be able to climb so high. And all of this stuff, and they have to drop the requirements in order for women to actually pass. And it's again, those things aren't arbitrary. We're talking about some very physical differences, though.
Those are the most obvious, though.
Those are
you can see those, and those are still the ones that are being denied.
Right, and that's a particularly egregious example. But I would posit that literally everything about our mannerisms. Another area that this comes up very frequently is that women tend to be in not as high paying fields. They might tend to gravitate towards childcare or towards education because they're dealing with kids, and these kind of fields more often. People say, well, it's a gender construct because it's a societal expectation that a woman should be more apt towards child rearing and child development than a man should. And actually, it doesn't even necessarily apply to just lower paying fields, because women also tend to dominate the higher positions in biology, or and are actually more overrepresented in medicine as well, like human care. I'm remiss to mention his name because, again, Jordan Peterson, but Jordan Peterson referred to, like, it's the care of human beings. First of all, it's no small thing to be talked down on. The fact that women want to be in childcare is like, we need people to be caring for kids. That's a laudable profession to have. But do you think it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that women are the ones who have to carry kids for 9 months and squeeze them out of their vaginas? I don't. I think that there's a pretty solid basis for why they might be more interested in looking after people in such a fashion.
Quick aside, though. Do you feel that, I don't know how much of that you guys heard, but do you feel that no matter where we are in the world, there's always some guy power washing the sidewalk?
I appreciate the cleanliness. San Diego, the whale's vagina, is a beautiful city, and like with human vaginas, it needs to be kept clean.
All right, we might cut that. I don't know. That was funny.
That was a come on, man.
We'll cut that. Me saying I might cut
No,
that.
the discussion about it makes it funnier.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
You know, well, that's the thing with. I'm not aware of any masculine like idea that kind of I guess denigrates motherhood or child caring or anything. If anything, these things are held in such high esteem that a guy. I mean, okay, so earlier, right? We did the Midway battleship tour, sorry, aircraft carrier, and
No, my mind immediately jumped to the board game.
no, Midway, the aircraft carrier in San Diego, and there was a guy. Now I can't remember the actual term that he used, but in the control tower of this aircraft carrier, there's the boss, and then there's the guy directly under him, and he was
First mate.
no, we're talking about like this is they're not
Not pirates.
I mean they're not pirates, they're seamen, but they are
Immature jokes.
yeah, they are they're more on the air, like the aircraft control tower control thing, but so anyway, it's one of the most stressful jobs on the carrier, to do this job, to orchestrate planes landing on a very small runway. And the guy who was actually given the tour was this guy who was the boss, the guy who was in charge of it all. Really very accomplished dude. And he was saying that when he retired from the Navy, that they gave him his chair that said boss on it, and that his wife and mother of their 3 kids, that was her chair. So he clearly respected everything she did. And I don't see a lot of, like, with toxic masculinity, people denigrating motherhood. I think it's the feminist side who are saying men suck and also mothers suck,
Yeah, I mean, to kind of build on that, I mean, they do seem to be some degree denigrating the fields that women themselves choose to be in. I mean, I've seen,
which is weird because they're the ones taking all the fucking women's studies.
There are special programs designed to pull women away from other fields and get them into STEM and politics and management specifically. Basically, anything that's high paying, anything that's influential, they want women to be in. So I mean, it does seem incredibly kind of condescending to approach a woman and say, no, you're wasted in childcare. You shouldn't be in child and adolescent development. You should be in science and technology and medicine. That's where you'll be happiest. That's where you'll be of most use. And it's like, but I wanted to look at the kids and hang out with the kids. And no. You need to be making $250,000 a year and have say and your company's board because women are underrepresented there. So we need more of you there. So stop what you're doing and get into that field.
So we need you to work 14 hours a day and everything that makes anybody's life worth
and oftentimes
living,
not have a family. I mean, there has been some when women tend to unduly focus on career, they often do so at the expense of being able to have a family. And this is another just biologically based difference between men and women, is that women actually have a fairly short fertile period, at least ideally speaking. I mean, a man can get a woman knocked up and can do so healthily at 50. You wouldn't. If a woman can still get knocked up at 50, she's running some pretty severe risks compared to a woman who's 25.
I think it's actually after 35 your increase of mental illness or some kind of physical deformity dramatically increases.
Because there's an ideal fertile period, and women also feel that. I mean, they do have biologically hardwired mating instincts that say, like, I'm fertile right now, need to get knocked up, need to have baby. Like that's so I mean. So, I mean, the idea that women want to have families earlier and would rather put more focus in that area is not a societal construct.
No,
it's a biological reality.
It's reality because, like, when I think of where I was at 25, I had no fucking idea where I wanted to be or what I was going to do.
You probably weren't dying to have kids.
Right? Well, I wasn't dying to have kids, but largely speaking, a woman kind of has to have that figured out at that age. She's got a lot of pressure on her, and I think
well, I think we should also define not pressure from the outside necessarily.
It's not pressure.
Internal
pressure. It's internal pressure.
Hormonal pressure.
hormonal pressure, but there's also a lot of pressure of outside pulling her away from hormonal pressure. Pressure.
There is outside pressure.
I have a little bit of a cold, so there's pressure from the outside trying to pull her away from viewing that as a valid option. So it really is just making life more difficult.
I mean, I would also say that there's, I mean, what you got the her mom who wants grandbabies, who's when are you gonna find a good man? And there's pressure from the outside that's also pushing her towards doing the child rearing thing as opposed to the STEM thing.
Right.
There's definitely pull in both directions there, but I think that in that case the mom probably has a better argument for why she's saying what she's saying.
Yeah, because you can realistically you can do that STEM thing a little bit later, but you've got this amount of time if you want to have healthy children, and you can't say at 25 I definitely don't want that. You really can't. You don't know.
Yeah, you could get to 30 or 35.
Yeah, and just realize I really fucked up. Mm-hmm. I mean, that happens all the time with people who, people stuck in careers where it's like, I really wanted to fucking, be a, I don't know, gynecologist.
So I'm struggling, and I've thought of this before, and I'm trying to think of it now, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion. But can you think of a single thing that people want to claim as a societal gender construct that is not true because we're so gender fluid and all that pertains to masculinity or femininity that doesn't have some basis in biology? And if anyone listening to this has any other ideas, I'd love to hear them. But
so you're saying is there a behavior?
Well, like I mentioned, like suits earlier.
Okay.
Like there's a reason why suits accentuate broad shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why dresses tend to be form-fitting. There's a reason why women tend to go into childcare fields. All of those things you can look at and say, yeah, I can see the biological basis. And it's a little evo-psych, pseudoscience kind of approach to it, but it also seems fairly well borne out in just studies in biology. I can't think of a single thing that people want to point to and say that's just a gender construct that doesn't have some basis in biology. Can you? Take your time.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard women make better combat pilots.
For what reason?
Just multitasking, being able to process lots of information at once. But I don't. But even that's biology. That's based in biology. You said if that wasn't based in biology, that'd be totally like fluid, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's based in. So no.
Yeah. We pause for a sec, man. So you had a brief cursory look too of just different gender roles, gender stereotypes. We weren't really able to think of any except for the oft-mentioned ones. I just don't see how any of them don't have some basis in biology or hormones or all the things that fall under that blanket. Jeff was unable to either. A quick little bit of scrolling through some stuff online for examples of this kind of stuff didn't seem to reveal anything that doesn't fall under that blanket as well. So we're kind of at a loss. But viewers, if you can think of a good example of something, or listeners, that could be defined as a gender social construct that's not that has absolutely nothing to do with biology, we would both love to hear it. So please comment, message, whatever appropriate.
The one thing, I can't think of in that specific sense, but the thing I've heard argued the most is the reason why we have these gender roles is because women from a young age are told to play with dolls and men are told to play with trucks and soldiers. And it's like, yeah, but that started somewhere, right? Yeah. And for as long as there's been kids, there's been some form of thing for them to play with.
Well, and those two things are manifestations of biological expectations, i.e.
Right.
The girl is going to have a kid. Theoretically, most girls do at some point, so it makes sense to give her the doll. And wouldn't say most boys are at a point where they're going to be conscripted as soldiers or anything, but when that shit happens, it's the men who do it.
Yeah,
so,
the men are. I mean, that's the thing. Men are still forced into conscripted service. Women aren't. But
well, we can't be that gender equal, man. I mean,
right. Yeah, exactly. I was actually thinking of that.
Well, it's another. I mean, just to backtrack slightly before we move topics, but it is kind of funny how this stuff always seems to move in a direction that benefits itself under the auspice of gender equality.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, you would have something where, well, STEM field pays a shit ton.
Yeah.
So they want women in STEM fields.
Right.
Conscription comes with forced military service at considerable risk to your own well-being.
Well, not only like it's
no interest in getting women to that at all.
Yeah.
Or I mean, taxi drivers, mostly men. Coal drivers, mostly men. Where are the initiatives to get women into these fields?
Yeah.
If it really is all about gender equality and smashing down socially constructed, gender barriers preventing women from being equally represented in all fields, where is the interest for more women taxi drivers and for more women hacking away at coal in some fucking mine miles underground? Let's see it.
Let's go in. There's two rabbit holes before we leave this topic I want to go down. One is conscription, and the other one is again with like toys and programming kids. Just imagine how fucking horrible conscription actually is if you are one that has to endure it, like in Vietnam. So you're a guy. You've got a career, or you're in college. You might have a girlfriend. You have some kind of life. And then one day, letter comes in the mail. Hey, report to your army officer because now you are in for forced living conditions. You have no choice. Like, you're going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. You're going to run laps. You're going to train to shoot a gun. And then we're going to send you out to one of the most dangerous places in the world right now where you might very likely die. You have to put aside absolutely everything to go face death at the drop of a hat. I mean, when the call comes, you got to go. There's something that, yeah, it's horrific. And, of course, feminists aren't going to say, well, women should have that thing too. Right. No, that's just for the men because fuck them. They can die. The other thing is, let's imagine we go back prehistoric areas and there's a tribe of people, and this relates to toys, believe me. You could say that okay, so you have a tribe of people and they give dolls to their children, their female children. They give little soldiers with spears to their male children. Well, why would that be? Is it because the first time that tribe was threatened, naturally, because of biology, the man stepped up and sacrificed his life or killed somebody else for the benefit? Or, like there's a reason that's there.
Or is it just totally arbitrary?
Yeah, or is it
has
just
nothing to do?
Yeah.
Again, that my extreme distaste at people saying the gender I was quote unquote assigned at birth. Like the doctor just said, well, fuck it, let's just roll the dice. It has absolutely nothing to do with the shit dangling between their legs or their DNA or their hormones or their chromosomes. It's just completely arbitrary. Is an absurd notion.
These things come from real life instances. They're archetypes. The little green soldier that you buy as a little boy at the dollar store for 99 cents is
you get a pack of them for like $5.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Quick aside,
I had a shitload of them.
Do you play those? Do you ever play the plastic? I forget what they're called, but they had a couple of video games like N64 day, where you got to play the little green
Army Men.
Army Men, yeah.
I still play that,
dude.
It's a great game.
It is time for a remake, dude.
Yeah. They did.
With what?
Well, wait. I'm sorry. They have an RTS out now. That's an old RTS.
No, I don't want an RTS. I want a first person.
Really? I want Army Men?
I want an FPS of Army Men.
I like the RTS. The RTS was about perfect. Because when I would play with those little soldiers, I would have been, what if these were alive and I was fighting my brother, with his little green soldiers? So I thought the RTS was great for that.
No, I want to be able to run around the same way you do with like Squad or Battlefield or something.
Yeah.
But everyone's just plastic and the whole world's just plastic, and you got like a flamethrower, and
Okay.
you don't just like hit a guy with your flamethrower, you like melt him, you know?
Let's do it.
That
We need a
if
remake.
if any game devs
or
are
a
listening,
reboot.
there is a market for that.
There is.
Please get into that. Anyways.
But the thing is, those are archetypes, and they're based off something.
Huh?
They didn't, there wasn't a guy sitting there going, there had to be the concept of a soldier first, and the first soldier was probably a guy who went out and either to protect or attack, doesn't matter, but and the first mother was obviously a woman, like duh. So I mean they're.
Well, it's kind of treading ground that's already been trod in terms of
we're going to talk about
established. Like it's there's a basis in biology for all of these things that are in the modern narrative being labeled arbitrary assignments that are essentially inferior to what we should be practicing, which is complete gender fluidity. And I would agree that our modern society allows for that more than 99.9% of all human history. Because, like I mentioned earlier, men no longer have to be hunting.
Right.
In modern society, it doesn't really benefit a guy to be strong enough to, kill another. I mean, except for in times of war or your odd bar fight, it much more benefits you to be cooperative and to be able to work with others on, your project that's assigned at work and to know how to computer code. And these aren't necessarily like things that have traditionally, for the vast majority of human history, been traits that have been exemplified by one gender or the other. So I mean, our modern society definitely allows for more gender fluidity, but saying that, I'm kind of grasping for words, but saying that gender roles as they've been established through all of human history are arbitrary is just a complete dismissal of the facts and a complete dismissal of biology.
Well, I would say,
as it stands.
To add to that, the role that a man and a woman plays actually really hasn't changed broad picture. So, men, whether you're talking about a hunter, a carpenter, or a computer programmer, are valued for their utility. And
ability to provide.
Ability to provide, yeah. So, that's utility. And women are valued for their physical attractiveness, because
caring, child rearing.
But the thing is, it's not that shallow. Physical attractiveness is a sign of good genes. A healthy,
right.
Our brains kind of go, physically attractive, she looks healthy. It is a little bit of a flaw in our brains where we assume that the most attractive is the most healthy, which obviously isn't always the case. But
I actually don't think that that's necessarily false. I think that that assuming that they'd be a good mate and partner on that basis is definitely false, because you could have a chick who's a 10 out of 10 who's a crazy bitch and is going to be completely awful to you.
Yeah. Well,
but if she's got a good fit body, long luscious hair, straight teeth, bright dazzling eyes, good breasts, an ass which indicates a good child rearing ability, that kind of stuff. If she has all of that, it does indicate to some extent that she's healthy.
Yeah.
And and this is definitely segueing into the kind of demonization of both what men want and just masculinity in general. But our bodies don't necessarily, like, when I look at a nice pair of tits, I don't think those tits will be able to feed many of my children.
Yeah.
Therefore they're hot. I just think hot tits. But the reason that I think hot tits is because of the former. It's because biologically, I mean, a really flat-chested girl might be less likely to be able to produce as much milk. A girl with really skinny hips and no ass might be more likely to die in childbirth. A girl with shitty hair might have poor health, resulting in poor offspring.
That's what I was going to say was talking about like toxic masculinity and the demonization of the male
segue.
Oh, thank you. The demonization of the male preference is male sexuality isn't as simple as finding the hottest girl at a bar and banging her. There's so much that comes into play. I've been with like good looking, like above my pay grade type women who scent is a big thing in attraction, right?
For them?
No, for us. I mean for both, genders. But so if they, how do I put it? I've been with really attractive women who, to me, smelled bad, and I later found out that they had some very unhealthy practices in their life, cocaine, whatever. I've been with pretty middle, my pay grade type women who I found absolutely gorgeous because that scent factor. They were healthy. They were
it's pheromones.
Yeah, pheromones and all that. So the health is a huge factor of what we pick.
Well, it just so happens that women factor in health and providing ability.
Right.
For men to find a good mate that can provide them offspring almost entirely based on physical appearance isn't unsound when you look at biology. But for women, for most of human history, if you had a guy who was good genes, great. But if he can't provide, can't protect you, and isn't going to commit to children that he rears with you, those things also make him a bad mate. Mm-hmm. I mean, women also still definitely objectify men into, well, he's, got good muscles and a good jawline and sharp looking haircut. And I mean, they find the physical aspects of men attractive as well. They just take it kind of a step further when judging for good mates by also saying, and he's got a great job, therefore he'll be able to give me money. He also is interested in me, therefore he's less likely to, ditch me to go bang other women, and he's more likely to stick around and be committed. Again, all biologically based. And if we're gonna kind of broach into toxic masculinity, I wouldn't say that there's also a subset, and you'll see this on, like, I don't know if you've ever taken the plunge and gone on to any like incel forums. Have you?
What is it?
Incel?
No, I've never heard of it.
So incel, this is something I came across on Reddit, and you see it. Say like red pill.
Okay. Like
awakening of how sexuality actually works. There's a lot of things that we've been talking about, which I generally agree with. You
have
MGTOW, which is men going their own way, which is men basically absolving from women by choice. And then you have incel, which stands for involuntarily celibate. And these are like the nice guy TM type characters who are, forever orbiters and white knights and are trying to get laid, but basically can't because they're like that undesirable. And I'd say on like, and you haven't even heard of it, right?
Well, even when you like
my point
when you describe a guy like that, there's a visceral reaction which is like,
everyone hates them.
Yeah,
like men hate them,
so
women hate
Fuck
them.
you.
Everyone hates them. Yeah. My point in bringing it up was like there is a really obscure movement that kind of demonizes how women choose to select mates, because these are the kind of guys who and I'm full aware that my name refers to Chad Thundercock, who's the
I was actually going to bring that up at some point.
Absolute bro, apex bro, who's banging all the women. But these men are upset that women are off banging Chad instead of them, and they're essentially demonizing women's sexual preferences by saying, "Well, I'm actually the best." Like, despite not displaying any of the biologically based traits for mate selection that are pretty fucking reasonable, they should be sleeping with me instead of them. So I just to kind of get it out in the air, if we're gonna address, I think, the much more prevalent issue of women demonizing male sexuality, there is a small subset of men who are demonizing normal female sexuality for reasons that don't make sense at all. But, and I just gave you a brief cursory overview of that, you condemn them right off the bat. Right. Those men are being fucking ridiculous.
Can I elaborate on why?
Men are being almost done. Okay. Men are being fucking ridiculous. But the women on the same side who say, it shouldn't matter if I'm a bitch and I'm 300 pounds and I'm attractive and exhibit poor health and don't have any of the markers that men typically use to determine attractiveness. Doesn't matter. They should still choose me.
Right.
Just as ridiculous as the incel community.
Absolutely. With the ultra beta incel community in mind, we don't even really, it doesn't really come down to sexuality. When I think of like who I choose to be around and friends that I like to hang out with, there's a theme where pretty much all of them, except for one who's quickly exhibiting some incel characteristics, although he's not celibate, but he's a very submissive guy. I like to be around people who are opinionated, strong-minded individuals who I can have a conversation with. And I can only imagine that for a woman, that's attractive. As attractive as that is for me to have a woman who doesn't just bowl over and accept what I say, ad nauseum. Like,
well, actually, we may have stumbled upon an answer to our earlier question. One of the alleged social constructs is that women are incredibly submissive and men are a lot more dominant. And I can agree that men tend to come across as more dominant. I don't necessarily feel like
I think it's spread pretty even.
If you just spitball and we're talking about what men prefer to sleep with, and you described a female who's got fiery, passionate temper, strong opinions, I don't feel like that dissuades most guys that I know.
I think I don't think it dissuades most guys who are sure of themselves.
I feel like it almost. Well, yeah, yeah. If you feel like you're going to be completely
cucked.
Just walked over, cucked, yeah, by that.
Gotta put some
get
memes
the
in
new
here.
favorite term in there, yeah. That I could see that as being a slight problem, but I feel like for most men that I've talked to, and this is very anecdotal, but the idea of like a strong, opinionated woman, given that she's not spouting ridiculous feminist bullshit, but just like has her own thoughts and her own opinions, and all that, I feel like that almost is more attractive than.
I think it's the myth.
You don't. I mean, not relates to the bedroom too. You don't just want some chick who's gonna starfish and just kind of like be a hole there and some tits for you to touch. Like, you want a chick who's gonna like take charge and like get on top and do some freaky shit.
Yeah,
and, like guys like that.
I like how you broke that down to the ultra like depraved, but.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
it's true.
I mean, sex is a huge factor in what people find attractive one another. And I mean, you could say the same for bitch beta guys. Like, that's the guy who's gonna be. Is it okay if I touch your ass now?
I need positive affirmation.
Your buttocks. I need positive affirmation.
Yeah.
Is this okay with you?
Yeah.
Is this okay with you? It's like no, like women also kind of want a guy who's just gonna grab her by the hips, flip her over, and go to town doggy style. Like, that's also a yes. I mean, I in that case, I wouldn't necessarily say it's so much biologically based that women should be submissive. I just kind of reject that idea wholeheartedly. I don't feel like most men want that at all.
No, I don't think so.
I feel like that's a result of women saying, well, men tend to talk over women in board meetings and don't value opinions as much and all this, and it's like I don't see that at all.
Well, I mean, while we're on the topic of sex, because obviously if you look at like any kind of porn out there, a big male fantasy is the ultra submissive woman, just do whatever you want to me. It's like, okay, yeah, that is a fantasy, but in reality, I don't think most men, they don't want that. As you said, you want somebody who is going to be a companion, not a fucking slave to you.
At risk of sounding potentially contradictory, I almost feel like that relates more to a permissiveness of objectification, which is something that should be permissible. I feel like a lot of that kind of relates to it's okay if you just use my body as an object.
Oh, for like this
for what you're talking about in terms of like being submissive.
Mm-hmm.
But I could make that same counter argument the other way around, is like when I'm getting ridden by a chick who's on top, I'm basically just a self-standing dildo.
I see what
I'm
you're
a
saying.
dildo on a stand.
She's definitely using you as an
pound
object,
down on.
Yeah.
And that's hot too. Like, and that's, and it's like, damn, like this girl's just getting off of my cock right now.
Yeah.
And has, she's not stroking my face with eye contact, telling me how much she cares about me, that I'm the light of her world. It's like, no, she just wants some dick. Like, that's awesome.
She wants some dick and it was mine.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same. So I almost feel like, I mean, I'm familiar with the same kind of genre that you're talking about of submissive pornography, but I feel like a lot of that is just the fact that women do need a lighter.
I think I tossed that a little bit hard.
Yeah, a little bit.
I was trying to get
it. Folks, there was a woman there was a reason that I went into swimming and not anything that actually involved eye-hand coordination of any kind. Anyway, so I would say that porn has less to do with the idea that men are incredibly turned on by a really passive woman, and more to do with the fact that it's a woman who's okay with being objectified. And in the current climate of I'm up here. Don't stare at my tits. And
Yeah.
I mean, guys shouldn't be doing that shit in casual conversation. But the idea that like a guy would just like a woman for her physical qualities is so demonized these days that I feel like there's a niche for a market of women in porn who just love being objectified.
Right.
And that's what a lot of submissive porn boils down to.
It's such a, I mean, we're not making the case for objectifying women, but I think
I am. But I'm making the case for objectifying everyone.
Sorry if there's a little noise. We're tossing the lighter back and forth.
Yeah,
but
I don't know what the fuck happened to mine. I left it inside, but no, dude, I am.
Well,
I can look at a girl and just think, damn, that girl's got a banging booty. Like, I would love to get up in that. I would love to touch that, slap that back and forth. She could have a stellar personality. She could have hopes, aspirations, things that I also would really admire. I'm not necessarily aware of them when I'm checking her out across the bar. And if we did get intimate to the point enough where I learned about those things, I would appreciate them too. But there's nothing wrong with. I see
what you're saying.
So I'm fucking a girl and we can have amazing conversations at the cigarette break afterwards. We could have amazing, awesome conversations at the point leading up to us fucking. Mm-hmm. But at some point, if I just have her bent over, for all I give a fuck, she is a warm, wet hole with an ass for me to be slapping, and that's awesome. And again, when I'm on bottom and she's just got a just independently standing up cock that she can just bounce all around, also awesome. I'd also point out that women are the main purchasers of sex toys. It's been estimated anywhere between like 40 to 60% of women own or have used dildos. What the fuck is a dildo but literally a man objectified down to his penis? I don't think either of you or I have a problem with that. You know, it's kind of shame if a guy told you I own a
Sometimes you like to use that one to, yeah.
There was also some when I looked this up about basically using those for extra play in sex. But I mean, if a guy tried to say, yeah, I want to have sex with you and my fleshlight,
right,
wouldn't fly. And same thing, like it's kind of shameful for a dude to even own one.
Yeah.
Because there's this this railing against a woman's more than just her vagina, but a man can just be his penis. I don't feel like we should have that double standard in either way.
Okay. I'm on board with you now. I see what you're saying.
My main concession to your point would be we shouldn't only do that.
Right.
Unless you're in some
there's a
freaky
time and a
one-night
place,
situation.
and I mean, I guess as much as I hate to admit it, there was a time in my life as a younger man. We're talking about fucking high school shit. Right. Maybe early 20s, where I was convinced that being the nice guy was what I should be. And being a good person is different from being the nice guy. Being the nice guy,
nice guy TM.
Yeah. So being the nice guy is just letting people walk over you, not displaying any self-confidence.
Pedestalizing women.
Incredibly
deferential, treating women as snowflakes, deer,
And thanks for bringing up pedestalization, because that brings up another good point. Huh?
It's a pedestalizing.
But past tense, you brought up
words. How do we do them? All right.
Anyway, so first thing was the one thing I got from a lot of my early girlfriends was, well, you don't really view me as a woman. And what does that mean? It's like, well, you're not respecting my sexuality. And part of my sexuality as a woman is I want you to be a man. Like I've literally had women say, I want you to take what you want when you want it.
Yeah. Being assertive, being dominant.
Being assertive, yeah. And that, again, when I relate that to being a friend to somebody or having a friend, I want a friend who is assertive, will make a point, have a good conversation. That's how you bring that over to the friend. Obviously friends, two male friends, unless they're gay, aren't having sex, but it does scale
I want
to
you
that.
To dominate me, Jeff.
Yeah, no.
But
it does scale to that where we can be passionately disagreeing, but we're still friends. Right. The other thing was when you put a woman on a pedestal, and again, this is a woman saying this, she doesn't feel like there's anything she can do in the relationship. Mm-hmm. She's already the godlike figure.
Right.
And what does she have to do but nothing?
She's apex flawless. You respect her fully, regardless of how much she actually deserves that respect.
Yeah. And women have their own agency, and they want to. impress and strive to as much as a man wants to impress a woman wants to impress a man, right? And so if you're already so impressed just by her being a physical person, then there's nothing she can do for you. It's over. It's done.
Well, it's an odd male comparison with this. I don't know if you ever experienced it. I haven't experienced it often. But have you ever ended up with like a male groupie? Like not in a gay way, but like just some dude, usually a younger dude who just wants to like attach himself to you and just loves and respects everything that you
say
are.
Male on male groupie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever had that?
I've had so
I've had like 3 in my whole life.
I used to DJ quite a bit, and I did have, I would say, 3 or 4. I can think of one specifically, but I know there's more than that. Who, whatever I would do, for instance, I had a really shit set one day.
But they come up and, that was awesome.
That was the best
You're the best
like,
DJ ever.
I was like, you are literally the last person I want to talk to right now, because
their interaction with them in general is weird, right?
Yeah, it's very
uncomfortable.
strange. Yeah,
and
it's uncomfortable.
That's what I mean. Is like same thing going back to like that's the reason why women don't want men that pedestalize women, is because it's fucking weird for them. Like if you have somebody who's walking around worshiping the ground that you walk on, it's kind of uncomfortable for you. I mean, there's probably a certain kind of narcissist that loves that, but I feel like most normal people, it's just like, no, fuck all that. And the other point I wanted to go back to, I feel like most guys at some point, and generally, hopefully, it's in the high school era. Some guys get out of it sooner, but a lot of guys tend to cling to it a lot longer than that, are in that, for lack of a better term, blue pill mentality.
I just hate that whole pill.
I know, I do too. And the whole fact that you have a movement based around matrix terminology just bothers the fuck out of me, but it's effective in describing what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But that's why the red pill as a movement, and I guess kind of in a more broad sense, MRA, I think is getting so much traction, is because it is kind of revealing, like, no, that's not the way to interact with women. Like, if you're having trouble with women, well, are you pedestalizing them?
Yeah.
Are you being incredibly deferential to them? Are you, overly respecting their sexual boundaries? And that sounds terrible, but I mean, like, I don't know if you've ever been in a position of being, dropping a girl off after a date and you're standing on her doorstep and you're hoping for that, kiss at the end of the night.
Right.
Probably the best way you could.
Wait, why do you don't know if I've ever been in that? Of course I've been in that situation.
Well, that's a very like Hollywood kind of situation. I mean, literally like on the doorstep.
I have been in that situation, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But I mean, probably the worst thing you could do in that situation, if you want the kiss, is to go, is it okay if I kiss you right now?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, that's like the worst. If you just kind of put your hand on the small of her back, give her a little 180 twirl, lean her back a little, and just go in for it.
Well, I don't know. I've never done the 180. I just
just kind of a little sweep, dude.
Oh! You don't mean like a full?
Not necessarily literally 180.
She's facing left now.
I wasn't counting degrees. I didn't have a fucking protractor out or whatever. Okay. It was just. I'm just. That's what it is. Protractor's a little.
You probably could. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely measure an angle with like a degree. Anyway, we're gonna. So if the protractor's facing up and it's down, now it's fucking.
Besides the point, though, it's like you just kind of literally sweep her off her feet a little bit in your arms and just kind of go in for the kiss. You're gonna get an enthusiastic kiss, and most of the time, I mean, and if she says, "Whoa, what the fuck are you doing?" Obviously, you back the fuck off. But like, that seems like a good way to go about like inciting actual sexual interest in you. Is to be a little assertive. Like, I want to kiss you. I'm gonna kiss you now.
Yeah.
And it's tough to kind of say things like that because we all know, we've all seen, there's just some drunk sloppy fuck at a bar somewhere who's just like literally just running up and fucking groping women.
But we're not talking about that situation.
Yeah,
but talking about you had a good night together.
But that's what they'll say. Yeah. That's what they'll say. And I've had these kind of debates online and a few times in person, and I'll say things like that, and people be like, "Well, that's sexual assault," and it's just like, dude, there's kind of a big difference between like going in for an end of the night type kiss, like you're reading the chemistry, and you might be off, and when you are off, Have you ever been off? I've been off.
Oh, I've been off.
It's one of the most fucking
embarrassing. You beat yourself up all night.
You just shame walk back to your car, hop in. You're gonna sit there for 10 minutes before you even drive off. Just like,
Can I tell you?
God, I'm a fucking idiot.
I had a really cringy moment with a girl. I misread
main point.
Oh, sorry.
Before you get in, main point. That's not a mark of somebody who's a fucking rapist.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
That's not. That's it's just somebody like most guys' natural reaction to them making a first move and a girl rejecting them is not to go, well, fuck that. This shit's happening anyways. Like you don't know. You shame walk back to your car and you feel like a moron for the rest of the week.
Absolutely. I had one date that still kind of makes me cringe. Where
years later,
well, I mean, when you're a younger guy or girl, you're feeling out like the conduct, because there's a conduct to dating. And I took a girl out on a date, and we had a really wonderful time, and all the signals she was giving me, every single one, head back, flip hair, give me a kiss, this kind of thing. And I went in for the hug. And I can
hear our somewhat 15,
it was
20
bad.
Viewers right now just all sharp intake of breath, cringing right now.
As soon as I did that, I went, oh, dude, you just fucked up. Yep. And I beat myself up all night. And you know what? She never went on another date with me.
Yeah, well, because you displayed incredible. Well, this is the reason why, like, I was trying to extrapolate on that the Red Pill has had so much success, is that you followed the PC narrative to a T.
Right.
You respected her space. You didn't do anything that she didn't explicitly give you permission to. You deferred to her as a possibly oppressed, not minority, but a persecuted group, and she doesn't. You gotta stay back, let her kind of lead the action. But in actual reality of actual dating practices, you basically just outed yourself to her as a complete bitch.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
There's a pink lighter up on
it's in my pocket.
We're having some struggles here, folks. Anyways, not quite technical difficulties, but even worse.
I think we
can't light our cigarettes, man.
We got the technical difficulties down, but now we're substance abuse has proven to be a real bitch.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why it's had so much traction, and to kind of fall back a little bit on the whole toxic masculinity side of things. I mean, so a lot of what feminism boils down to, the sexual liberation movement, and women should have agency, and they should understand sexual interaction. Red Pill is just kind of a natural reaction to that movement. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Red Pill's.
Wait, did you say women should have agency, or?
Yeah.
Well, women do. Like, what do you mean?
Well, they didn't win first and second wave feminism. We're fighting.
Oh,
right?
Well,
they do now.
Okay,
but I mean, my main point here was just that I don't feel like the Red Pill or MRA would be a thing if third wave feminism hadn't kicked up.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll take the direction. It even no. I'm gonna stick to that, because I feel like after second wave feminism, there wasn't any movement explicitly saying like touching a woman on the small of her back without obtaining express permission is sexual assault.
Right.
There's no movement like that. Like first and second wave was like women should be able to vote, own property, shouldn't be regularly beaten in their homes, and things, all of these causes that nobody today is about to disagree with. And then third wave feminism comes in and starts getting incredibly nitpicky in comparison, and wants to point out things like that. I mean, when you look at like the 1 in 4 rape statistic that's so often bandied about, they basically changed the definition of rape to be so inclusive of all sexual interactions that something like putting did a man ever touch you without your permission?
Well,
is technically rape.
I've had a college professor say
that
when rape was denying a woman sex.
Yeah.
Now, I was in the classroom, and she said this. Rape is denying a woman sex when she asks for it or when she, wants it. What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you have, many men that I've talked to have experienced this, and I did as well. But before I was allowed to actually enroll in classes, not everyone needs this before actually enrolling, but basically before any active participation in the college campus, men need to go through a class basically telling them what rape is and how to not be a rapist. And a lot of what they're detailing is not rape. It's normal sexual interaction between human beings. I mean, like, they're not saying things as simple as, when you're holding a girl down by her throat and she's trying to scream, no, stop, no, please, oh my God, and slapping you in the face, you should probably stop that. That's not something that they need to teach people. They're teaching people things like what you listed is. I mean, yours is actually a particularly egregious example, but like I said, you may not touch a woman without her permission.
Oh, hugging, you mean? Like, what was?
Well, I think a hug is something that's like mutual.
What was the egregious example?
Yours of denying a woman sex is a form of.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
That's pretty. That's, and I've heard that before too. But that's one of the more extreme examples. But I could even fall back on, like I said, putting your hand on the. You're at a. Just picture yourself. You're at a bar with a chick that you've been talking to all night. You're at the bar. You're gonna try to buy her a drink. Mm-hmm. Put your hand on the small of her back. What can I get you? Like, that is now being classified as sexual assault.
I would say that's just friendly.
That's.
I've had dudes that's come up to me and be like, "Hey, man, like quick hug, arm around the shoulder. What can I get you tonight? You look like you're having a rough day."
People
like that's not sexual assault.
Touching each other.
It's an intimate.
But even if it's in a sexual way, like I could want to take that chick home and fuck her until she's a paraplegic, but that doesn't mean.
I think you're overstating your prowess.
You wanna give it a row, bro?
No. Okay. I like my legs. I want to walk. Just on the off chances that's true.
The main point is, that's not an example of sexual assault. That's an example of just normal sexual human interaction, and it's this extreme policing and demonization of male sexuality and male interest. And I mean, if a woman wants to come up and put her hand on your arm, that's not sexual assault,
right?
And one of the ones that pisses me off the most is women aren't allowed to consent to sex when they're intoxicated.
Right.
But men can be raped. Men can be.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if a guy actually raped a chick while he's blackout drunk, I'd want to hold them accountable. But if two parties who have both had, women metabolize alcohol a little bit more poorly than men. Again, biologically based. There's a reason why women should not be outmatching men shot for shot in bars.
I was a bartender for a while.
I could touch on this, but
yeah.
So let's say the woman's had 4 beers and the guy's had 6, and those two people have sex. The man did not rape the woman. 2 intoxicated people consented to sex. I'm assuming that both of them can hold their alcohol to the point of still being somewhat aware of what's happening, just a little loosey goosey, right?
Well, you can. I mean, don't women can have sex far drunker than men can. Like for men. Not being able to get it up because you're too drunk is a thing. So you could also say that, like,
well, but that is actually a good point in favor of women. Because it's pretty hard to rape a blackout drunk man. It's happened, but it's a lot harder.
Well, I was gonna say I think that is, part of their argument is that the man was so much more lucid than the woman because she's a man. Like,
how do you measure how drunk someone was after the fact, though? I know people who can drink an entire 12-pack and be fine, and other people who drink 1.5 beers and they're shit-faced.
If you're a guy who's pumping drinks into a girl because you know that later on the night she's going to be more willing to make bad decisions, you're a piece of shit.
Right.
But if 2 people who are drunk and wasn't like the explicit action, her drunkenness wasn't the explicit action of him, decide to have sex, that's just 2 people making bad decisions, Well,
one other thing that this did kind of remind me of is I don't know if you've seen this shit, but there's like a special nail polish out to that the women can put on, and they can put it in their drink, and if the nail polish changes color, that drink has like GHB presence. And there's all this focus around men dosing women at bars to get them. And I've heard this from my female friends too. It's like, oh, I went out to the bar and I got drugged. And I went and looked at the statistics. For women that come in with dosing, they go to the hospital, actually get the toxicology test.
Yeah.
They're actually just really drunk. They're actually just basically have alcohol poisoning. Like maybe
close to it,
maybe lightweight, but I mean, or they're just horrible and they just kind of assume, well, there's no way I could have possibly done this to myself, so somebody must have put something in my drink to get me to that point. And not to say it doesn't happen. I'm just saying compared to the hype around it, it's vanishingly rare. Like the idea that, okay, if a woman's going to a frat party, she would be less well employed watching her drink, making sure that, covering it when she's not drinking from it, and, making sure she's not handed any open containers or anything like that. Much less well employed doing that than she would be just drinking less.
Right.
Because most women who are in instances where they do things like what you just described, get taken advantage of when they're intoxicated, is not a result of any kind of dosing or malicious intent. It's the fact that they get drunk and they lose control of their own actions. And I mean, if I go out to a bar and I knock back 12 shots of whiskey and I fall down the stairs and break my arm, whose fucking fault is that? I mean, I get that there's a perpetrator in some circumstances, like what you just described, a very predatory kind of circumstance where the guy is basically sober and he's just pumping drinks into the girl.
But I think that's
if she gets drunk,
right?
if she gets drunk and she decides to fuck a guy while she's drunk, that's on her. Right. If she doesn't want to get to a point where her inhibitions are so lower that she'd do something that she wouldn't otherwise,
it's on both of them. It's just they were both equally a part of this drunk decision that they made, and hey, maybe that wasn't the person you were going to sleep with, but hey, maybe. Well, but I'm assuming
that she is usually the one that has a problem with it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Usually. Well.
Okay. And then here's
have you ever gotten drunk that you slept with a girl that you?
Yeah, I was about to lead to that. Yeah. Is that I've rolled over and looked and been like, oh, I took a 3 to bed. I'm never drinking again. I'm never gonna drink again.
That's physical. Women don't judge men like that. So how dare you?
Well, but they do. They come back and they roll over and go, There's no way I would have slept with that guy. Therefore, he must have raped me.
Right.
Is total non sequitur from what that actual interaction was. It's like, if you choose to partake in a substance that lowers your inhibitions to the point where you do something like that, that's on you. That's not. Let's actually take a piss break.
Okay.
Do you actually really like Mike's, dude?
Nah. I mean, no.
wait. What does yours say? I said mango. Yeah. I thought you said orange.
Oh, sorry.
We have some leftover alcoholic beverages from a festivity here, and I don't know, man. I just always kind of felt like Mike's was for people who can't drink either beer or hard alcohol.
Yeah,
like
it's. See, the weird thing too is I got this thing. I don't know if you remember the Captain Morgan's coolers, where they were like they were similar to Mike's. They were fruity flavored drinks, and there's too much sugar in there. And I always get this thing when I drink those where my shoulders hurt, like after 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, it's weird. And I was told by a nurse that was just my body's reaction to drinking too much sugar.
Yeah, sugar's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the one piece of advice that I have for people who are getting involved in drinking. And I get somebody's 21 going out to the bar for the first time. It's like, you do not drink anything that's any kind of neon color.
Yeah, don't.
Like you'd be better having 3 straight shots of whiskey than you would be having 1 shot of rum mixed in with a fuck ton of flavoring and sugar and syrup and all that stuff. Like, sugar for both dehydration and for vomiting is awful.
Have you ever been to Stars?
Stars?
Yeah, they're in a downtown of somewhere. Downtown of somewhere in California.
We're trying to avoid you doxing us. So
yeah. And they have a drink called the Lightsaber.
Smells sweet, dude. I don't know about this.
Is it too sweet?
Let's see. Hold on. Taking the plunge here, folks. Wish me luck.
Mike's hard fucking mango. See, I'm gonna describe Chad's face. It's indifferent. It's inquisitive, and it is
definitely a lot more sugary, but
not bad.
It really reminded me of something. Like I said,
orange juice.
Well, yeah, it definitely doesn't taste like alcohol.
All right, Mike's is twist off. I don't need the opener.
Did I pop that?
Oh no, it's not twist off. No, it is. It's just wet. I use the opener.
Oh, fuck. Um,
I don't even bleed hands. Anyway, I have a point, but let me just see if I can.
I'm glad you remember where we were. 'Cause
Yeah, I
certainly
do.
don't.
All right. Sunny D. That's what it reminds me of. Shitty Sunny D. Anyway,
Maybe that's it. I'm like remembering drinks from my childhood.
it's definitely very Sunny D. Yeah. It's got that kind of fake orange mango-y thickness to it.
Not as horrible as I was expecting.
No, it's not bad. It's a good after beer.
I got a palate cleanse after drinking 12 quart. Wait.
We drank a lot.
Nine cores.
And I said I was going to do all this sober. So I think why male sexuality is demonized is because we are, traditionally speaking at least, the people who go out and have to engage, and so it's easier to say a predator is somebody who goes out seeking sex than somebody who just receives sex, right?
Right.
But what I know of like dating and just keeping a woman interested is basically it's about body language. So as you were saying earlier, the guy who just goes around just macking kisses on girls who aren't asking for it, versus the guy who's looking for those signals of, interest. Yeah, it's a totally, to lump those into the same thing is fucking ridiculous.
No.
Because one is being courteous and saying, if she's interested and she shows me she's interested, not verbally, but through body language, I'll go in for it. Yeah. And that confidence is, why do we like dogs, right? Because dogs, and it's been scientifically proven, can understand how we feel based on our facial
calling
signs.
men dogs, sir?
No, I'm just saying, why do we like those? Why are dogs man's best friend? Is because they exhibit an understanding of our emotions without us having to verbalize, because we can't verbalize, I'm sad, to Mr. Fluffykins. And I think for women and for men, because either way it's the same thing. You want a mate who can kind of, without you having to say it, understand that, hey, they're feeling sad right now. I should either
or horny.
I should do something. I should leave them alone. I should, yeah. So, but it's easier to demonize the person who's actively engaging rather than it is to demonize the person who's receiving that.
Okay. One other point I'd be interested on your take on, so it kind of traversed into toxic masculinity, as a term, is when this kind of stuff comes up. I've had some feminists make the point, and not that I don't have my own rebuttals of it, but I feel like it's the strongest point that they make in terms of socially constructed gender roles and masculinity and all that. Strongest point I think that they make is that these things also hurt men in certain ways. And a good example of that would be, say, unwillingness to share emotions. You could say that kind of like emotional closed offedness is something that contributes to the fact that men commit way more suicide, right? So that, in them battling gender roles, the primary function seems to be, that women should be in STEM and that, trans people should be accepted. But it's also, thrown men a favor too, because they're helping to reduce ways in which traditional gender roles, specifically masculinity in this point, also harm men.
Well, to that, I would say, what is the leading cause of men killing themselves?
Well, that's one way to tackle it, and we could get into that too. But I just mean, that's not the only way that they would point out that. So, not being able to express your emotions. To me, that's not something that you can really change. I think that's just a natural aspect of being a guy. Don't you? Well, some guys do a much better job of it than others. And
okay.
You and I both aren't particularly touchy-feely.
Yeah, I'm not a big hugger.
Share your emotions kind of guys. which is fairly typical. But do you not also agree that there's some level of societal pressure that men aren't supposed to be like that?
Yes.
You and I aren't supposed to cry during sad movies.
Right.
And
We
if
can't,
You're out to
actually.
that movie with a... Well, you might feel like it,
I mean, sometimes I do.
but you hold shit back usually, you know? I mean, and part of that's for the sake of appearances.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is why I say it's the strongest point, is because I feel like there's actually some, you know...
I see like what they're saying, and to touch on, I think, again, speculation, but the biology of this is men, you know, when you're talking about prehistoric men, they need to go out and they need to kill either the opposing tribe or something, the animal that they need to eat. They have emotional shit they need to deal with, but they need to be ready for the job. And they need to go off in a corner by themselves. And, you know, I've heard, like, soldiers say, hey, man, if you need to cry, go fucking, like, go bawl your eyes out. But, you know, do it over there. Get your cry out. And then come back get ready to do your thing. Because we're going in again, you know. To me, I don't think that's toxic. I think that's a very celebrated and noble aspect of men that shouldn't be denigrated. And that I don't think it so much as hurts men. I think it hurts men when it's viewed as something that's evil and toxic, rather than something that is like a strong characteristic of men.
Okay. Very similar to my line of reasoning. An analogy that I would give is like you have a cat, right? It's, I mean, domesticated, but also I just got kitties or something.
I was wondering if this is why he said you had a cat.
But something that cats do is when they're dying, or even when they're hurt, they make an attempt to not show it. When a cat's actually in its final stages of life, it's not inclined to go into a place that's comfortable and die there. It's gonna go and hide somewhere.
Yeah.
And part of that is this kind of like inherent hunter-prey instinct that a cat has, where, you know, even if a cat's got a severely fucked up leg, it's gonna try to walk to the best of its possible ability, because to do otherwise is to demonstrate weakness in an environment where that kind of weakness can potentially be deadly.
Right.
And I think this is kind of your point, that men have to, or at least it's biologically hardwired in us to display some of that same stoic acceptance of pain and negative emotion. But in the world that we've created for ourselves today, you crying at a movie doesn't mean that a fucking lion's gonna jump out of the fucking backstage and eat you.
Right.
So could you not make the argument that the emotional suppression that you're engaging in through that is actually more harmful than the positive benefits? I mean, you could say soldiers, sure, but most people aren't soldiers.
Yeah. No, I don't mean to. And I'm not trying to dodge the question, but
I don't think you were. I think you were addressing it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more specific.
I think even though, you know, a guy crying in a movie isn't necessarily, you know, it's not going to be really mean anything, but we have this kind of view of tribalism with men and women where, you know, for whatever reason, a man saying I'm in a leadership role is a bad thing, you know, and a woman saying I'm going to follow the leader and support the leader is somehow indicative of her lack of self-worth. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think, you know, to put it in modern day, you have, and let's put it ultra modern day, right? You have a woman who lost her job, and she was the sole breadwinner for the family. And she's just doesn't know what to do. And she's just out of herself. If there's a support role that a man can play, or her, you know, significant other, whoever it is, can play, of saying, hey, look, we're going to get through it and we're going to figure it out. And part of that doesn't involve me going off and sobbing my fucking eyes out. Part of that involves me going and solving this problem right now as we see it. And I think that scales to where men are right now, is we're problem solvers by nature. You know, I can't tell you how many relationships I've been in where I've been with a girl and she will take a problem, she'll look at it as a whole, and it's this insurmountable mountain. Whereas you go, no, that's not what you do. You take it a step at a time. What's the problem that I'm facing? What's the first step of solving this problem? I'm going to take that step, and I'm going to look at this problem again. What's the second step? Let's solve the second step, and let's chunk it out and get through it. So that role is definitely more, I guess, reversible. It could be applied to either person, but it is inherently, I think, a male trait.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, when my girlfriend or any of my past exes are having a hard time at work or life or social or whatever, my natural approach is to try to kind of talk them through it. And that comforts them and it helps them. But the best way that I've found that there is for women to help me when I'm in that same kind of situation is physical comfort. And that's not even just necessarily sex. It's, lay your head in their lap and have them kind of, fingernails through the hair or something.
It's like
is
the best
way
feeling
more
in the world,
comforting, way more comforting to me than them trying to say, well, let's break this down logically and just repeating a bunch of things that I've already kind of figured out.
Because you're already doing it in your head.
Right.
And you just want that. You just want that kind of, I guess, matriarchal comfort of, I'm gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this somehow. Let me figure out the problem, and you just
want to feel physically good.
Yeah,
it counterbalances. I mean, if you have a migraine, it helps if somebody rubs your head, and it's a physical solution to something that's kind of more deep rooted.
Yeah, and that's what really bothers me about this whole toxic masculinity is, it's, I don't view women as lesser because they can take that role and comfort somebody when they're trying to figure out a problem. I view that as completely equal and beneficial. I think with toxic masculinity, you have a group of people that are saying, why are men this way? We don't like that they're that way. Let's beat them down and view them as less. And, in doing that, they also view certain, I guess you could say, gender roles as being less in their involvement in any kind of problem. It just kind of defeats both sides, in my opinion.
Something else I'd be interested to hear your opinion on. We do hear a lot about toxic masculinity. It's kind of demonization of masculine behavior, masculine sex drives, all that. But there actually seems to be kind of, at least by my scope, incredibly vicious sex-based discrimination within women. I mean, I've seen studies where an attractive girl is actually much less likely to get hired based on her credentials by like a 50-something woman than like a man. Like a 50-year-old woman, a 25-year-old guy, and a 50-year-old guy all have equal footing insofar as this woman is concerned, but an attractive 20-something girl has no chance of getting hired.
Yeah.
And it actually relates to slut shaming. Again, biologically based, and we can get into that if we have time. But I feel like slut shaming is something that more that women do to one another than it is men doing.
Oh yeah.
I feel like men kind of like sluts for the most part. I mean, you might not necessarily date one, but it doesn't mean you hate them. But the amount of animosity that women get from other women for being perceived as a slut is kind of ridiculous. And because men don't seem to engage in those things the way that women do, I mean, it seems like you could potentially make a pretty solid argument that women are actually that an overemphasis on femininity is just as toxic as anything.
Well, I can't think of a promiscuous woman who kind of, put it out there that that's what she wanted to be that I disliked.
Promiscuous?
Yeah, sleeping around with everybody.
I get what promiscuous means. I mean, you could rephrase that point.
So, I've talked to and been with a few promiscuous women who were just like, hey, I'm not interested in any kind of relationship. You know, I never really actually slut shamed them though. I was like, we can fool around for a night and we'll be friends after. That's cool, man.
But I do think it does seem like we're getting into this, the male view, at least on this now. Again, rooting back to biology, men have to compete for sex in a way that women don't.
Right.
If I think I really want to get laid tonight, I could go out to a bar. Hopefully it's a Friday or Saturday. And try to
Wednesday night's your best bet.
Try to ply my. Well, that's when you're gonna get the real gutter.
Well, but you need if you need to get laid, you go out on a Wednesday. You're gonna get laid.
All right, get laid by somebody that I want to fuck. But I got to apply my charm. I got to apply my accomplishments, my wit, my humor, as well as my good looks. I got to try to go out looking my absolute best. I have full confidence that my girlfriend could just go to any bar around here alone just on a Friday or Saturday or Wednesday night and basically just stand there until she gets propositioned by a guy who's probably roughly within her playing field.
Probably be in about a half hour.
If I walked into a bar and said, all right, who's down to fuck in the bathroom right now? I think a laugh is the best I could hope for.
Yeah. That's a good joke.
Getting thrown out of the bar is probably a lot more likely.
Yeah.
If a woman walked in and said that, she'd have a line halfway around the fucking bar. Like, she'd be occupied for the next 5 hours. Easy.
Right.
So there does seem to be some kind of...
You're absolutely on the right track, and there's definitely a difference there. I think the people who are opposed to that, though...
This is in regards to slut shaming, right?
Right. So, in regards to slut shaming, there's two people who slut shame. It's mostly women, and it's kind of these beta guys, right?
All right.
So, I think it's a lack of ability to compete in the marketplace as we have it. So, if you're confident in yourself and you feel like you can compete, like you're probably not. You're not gonna slut. You're like, yeah, I was the first one. Yay, I was the first one in on this train.
Well, so my main point in bringing up that analogy with me and my girlfriend independently going to a bar and making that proposition is that it's actually tough for me, and actually requires a pretty demonstrable level of skill and ability. Like if I told you that I fucked 3 girls last night,
right?
It would be like, damn, dude, how the fuck did you manage that? Like, like aside from just money and straight prostitution, like that displays some fucking skill in the sexual market. If a woman came up to you and said, I fucked 3 guys last night, you don't think like, wow, that must have been really hard for you to do.
There's a couple of girls I could think of that was like, wow, that was really hard.
I'm just assuming that there's like, they're at least somewhat average looking. And for that matter, I feel like it is.
If Sarah and or Megan came up to me and said that they fucked 3 guys at a bar last night,
you call them a fucking liar. But
no, I would give them a high five, and I'd be like, "Good for you."
First, you call them a liar, but if they could somehow verifiably with pictures, timestamp pictures, show you that shit was true, you'd be like, "My God, you're accomplished." But,
you must have a great personality.
But most guys are in that same camp of like, it would be almost equally surprising for them to say that as some 350-pound troll woman being able to claim that she managed that same accomplishment. The point is that people don't regularly applaud behavior that is on the surface of it incredibly easy. I mean, if I told you, hey, I climbed K2, you'd be like, damn, dude, like props,
really?
You did some shit. Like,
you going right to K2, the hardest mountain in the world? Come on.
Everest? Wouldn't it be harder?
I don't know. For anybody who doesn't,
K2's up there.
Actually, nobody knows. I am a
You mentioned this in previous
kind
podcasts.
of a mountain climber. Yeah.
You called yourself a big mountain climber. To
Big
which I
mountain
said
climber.
you're a large
Yeah.
mountain climber.
Well, I was a small mountain climber, and I became a big mountain climber.
It
K2
was
is
during
one
our
of
fat
the most.
positivity podcast.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But K2 is one of the most difficult mountains in the world to climb, and most
All right,
people
fine,
die.
fuck it. I climbed a tough wall at Planet Granite. It's like, all right, you did some shit, you know, like
Right.
you exerted physical effort and skill and
But Chad,
training to accomplish something. What?
Physical effort and skill is all about toxic masculinity, man. Like,
Shut the fuck up.
you're forcing the environment to your will, bro. Like, you really need to get out of that circle.
My point is that it's not hard for women to do that same thing with relative ease. And our society doesn't applaud somebody when they say, yeah, I spent 6 hours on my couch last night binge watching Netflix and eating Cheetos, because that's not a hard thing to do. So I want to talk about, like, well, we're sexually empowered and we can go out and sleep with guys. It's like, but that's as hard for you as it is for me to sit on a couch and binge watch Netflix and eat Cheetos. So why the fuck would I
Sure.
applaud you for that?
No, there's
other
yeah.
hold
Sorry,
on
go ahead.
other and I'll wrap on this, but we've been talking a lot about, you know, what has defined our species through millions of years of evolution and, you know, hundreds of million years as a species. If a woman engaged in wanton sexual behavior and fucked every guy that she happened to come across who was halfway decent, for most of human history, that would result in a bastard and a woman who had no protection, no commitment from a man, and no way to provide for her or her child, i.e. a dead woman, basically, and an offspring that's not going to survive.
Right.
So it doesn't seem wrong to say that there's some element of our biology that looks at a promiscuous woman and says that woman has something biologically wrong with them. It's going to take a while for our evolution to adjust to the fact that we have condoms and birth control and welfare and that women can earn just as much as men and all of these other things. But for the vast majority of human history, if a woman was unduly promiscuous without securing commitment and without being sure of the paternity of her child, she was really giving herself a hard run of things. So basically for those two reasons, we don't applaud easy achievements, and that same easy achievement from women in the past would have been a death sentence, or at least severely crippling yourself and your ability to, you know, thrive in the world. We now look at women today and say that, you know, the girl who's sucking cocks every night after the bar, like, has some kind of issue. I mean, either she has an issue, or at very least what she's doing isn't to be commended. I've heard women complain, like, well, why do men get high fives when they sleep with a girl? It's like, because that means they did something. That means that they had to display some level of wit, attractiveness, intelligence, make themselves appear interesting, funny, or all of the above in order to get to that point. And if you hear, well, a woman slept with a guy last night, what did she do? Well, she let him. That's it. That's all she had to do.
Well, all right. So here's the thing. And it comes down to why it's absolutely ridiculous to view men and women at least having the same motives. Okay. So for guys, what's the ultimate thing that guys can do? It is the most physically fit and intelligent of us, hopefully, at least the physically fit, will spread their genes around and propagate a strong species. For women, and again, this isn't like a negative, this is two sides of the same coin, is to make sure that the person that they are with is the most physically fit and stable person they can be with. Right. So this is where feminism really fails, is because they view the woman's side as lesser. I can't think of any guy who views the woman's side of this relationship thing as lesser. It's not. It's just two sides of the same coin. So to address your entire rant, I would say that's basically it. Is the motives are different, but they are completely equal in the benefit of outcome.
True, and you touched on a good point that I completely omitted from my original rant, as you would say, and I would actually concur with, was the mate selection side of things. I think is basically what we were kind of touching on, in that there's nothing biologically wrong if a man just tries to spread his seed, a term that I feel icky. I just feel icky using it, but his seed. If he tries to spread his seed,
when they did it in the Bible with he spilled his seed on the ground, it's like ugh.
Yeah, it's just
just
and
say
what,
cum.
did you not have tissues?
Yeah.
Jesus, on the
Well,
ground.
they probably use like corn husks
all over the ground. No, they sit on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I mean to clean up afterwards, they probably use like.
What?
I don't know why my mind went to some guy wiping his dick down with a corn husk.
Anyways, but there's basically nothing wrong with him trying to spread his genes. We'll say his genes as far and wide as possible. But for a woman, if she's not trying to secure the highest possible value mate, knowing that again, pre-birth control last few decades of our existence, a very long existence that we've had. If she just went around banging every random John, she's gonna end up with low quality genes and no commitment that she's then stuck to.
Right.
A man can fuck 10 women in a night and have nothing to do with whatever woman out of that 10 ends up having kids, if all of them do, or one of them do, or 5 of them do, or whatever. He's done his job. He's spread his genes around. He's had kids. He's propagated his existence into the next generation. But in order for a woman to do the absolute best possible thing that she can, she needs to make sure that the genes that she's amalgamating with her own are the best possible.
Yeah.
So the idea that a woman's just hanging out in bar bathrooms blowing every dude that comes in there is the antithesis of that kind of
well, that's
biological
the thing.
imperative.
The stakes for a woman are so much higher.
Pregnancy. Women are also a lot more prone to STDs. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, they are. But they're looking at least in current day a 17-year commitment. And that is that if the child either goes into the military or goes off to college, they're looking at least a 17-year commitment, where the guy is looking at a financial burden, right? So it just makes sense that they're a little bit more choosy.
Well, but the idea of alimony and child supports are also recent constructs. So the thing is, I'm not disagreeing that our biology hasn't adapted to the fact that we have birth control. But I think if it does, then slut shaming will decline.
Well, here's a great thing,
in again the vast majority of human history, if a dude nailed 10 chicks and the chick came up to him and said, "Oh, this is your baby, take care of it," he could rightly just say, "No, fuck off. Like I'm not going to do that." And there's no government organization that's going to say, "Well, actually, because she said that she does, you owe her half of your income for the rest of the child's 18 years and all that." So our biology hasn't adapted to either of those things, and that means that guys are more predisposed to just nail sluts, because as far as our biology is concerned, that's propagating our DNA further into the future. So
let's see how well we are synchronized here. Can you look up on your phone when alimony was established? And we'll see if this works. Because I know roughly the date, but I'm not sure.
Date aside, I mean, I'm looking it up,
but going back to toxic masculinity, masculinity is so toxic that at a point in time when men ruled government and court system, that they decided on this great idea called alimony, which would be, in the legal definition, to keep a woman in the lifestyle of which she is accustomed to. And that was developed during the heart of the patriarchy, which we all know we hated women during that time.
Alimony is a little different than child support.
No, I'm not talking about child support. I'm talking about alimony.
Well, according to this, the first instance was the Code of Hammurabi in 1754.
Okay, so basically the height of the patriarchy, where we all know that in history women were maligned and hated for being just women. Hammurabi established a code where women would be paid an amount of money for being a woman.
His establishment's a little
It's probably
different
not the
than
same.
than our current thing. But yeah, I mean, you do raise a good point in saying
I mean, that's how toxic
the
masculinity
alimony.
is. That exhibiting a protective instinct over women, even women who disdain you after bearing a child that is yours.
Yeah, I mean,
You
we're getting
know,
into. I mean, we talked about a little bit this with feminism, but I mean, there's so many different markers by which you could establish that women are not a quote unquote oppressed class in today's society. Sure, they choose child care more often over STEM fields. Not evidence of the fact that they are oppressed. Evidence of the fact that they're not oppressed would be things like if you want to beg a woman for the privilege of having her spend the rest of her life with you, what do? You go and you buy her a piece of fucking jewelry with a diamond of arbitrary cost that wouldn't even be valuable if we didn't engage in this practice that's at least traditionally supposed to cost you a third of your year's salary, and ply her with it on the hopes that she'll say yes. You don't. This isn't maritime law, but you're familiar with the term women and children first. Everyone is. That means that if a sinking ship's going down and there's limited lifeboats, women and children go first. I understand children. Why women? That's a calculated decision that a woman's life is worth more than a man's.
well,
And
I know why women.
we're not concerned with the propagation of the species anymore.
Okay, that is why women.
Yeah, why not? We're not. I mean,
It's a holdover.
Okay,
is what I'm
sorry,
saying.
if 100 women die because a ship is sinking, we're not doomed as a species.
But it's
anymore.
it's a biological holdover from when we were
Good counter, since we've been
yeah.
talking about that a lot. But that doesn't. The fact that it's biologically based doesn't necessarily, to me, mean that therefore women are an oppressed. Okay, slaves are oppressed. Slaves were definitely oppressed, right?
Is there a word like
Hold on.
beyond oppression that you could use for slaves? Because I feel like they were more than oppressed. They were forced into servitude and
All right, it goes
early
beyond
death and-
oppression,
yeah.
but they were oppressed. But could you imagine a situation in which a boat's going down and there's like 5 lifeboats and you can only fit so many people on it, and the people said slaves and children first. We, the evil white slave owners, are going to choose to go down with the ships that our slaves can live.
Yeah.
Is that the example? I mean, biologically based or not, is that an example of an oppressed class of citizen? No, it's not. It's an example of extremely privileged class of citizen.
Well, this is why I don't understand.
Holding doors open. The phrase "if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy." You heard that one before too. I'm sure.
I used that in an argument recently to. Yeah.
So you've heard it, but
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that a woman's emotions are literally allowed to rule the entire atmosphere of a household. If you heard that from a man, you'd assume that he's beating the fuck out of everyone.
Right.
But it's perfectly. You could have that shit embroidered on pillows sold at IKEA, and it would be fine.
Right.
And again, it's not. They're not an oppressed class. They're a privileged, lauded, pedestalized, valued class of citizen, way beyond men.
Right.
You're not going to send the women to die on the battlefield. You're going to send the men because they are expendable.
Well, and that's the thing. Like that really kind of when I hear the phrase toxic masculinity, I go, you mean the exact like I guess group of people, as much as I hate to say that, who sacrifice themselves to make sure that you were comfortable.
Yeah.
And happy and but here's the thing, I wouldn't change that. I like it that way, and I think most women like it that way, where it's not that, not like sacrificing yourself, but where you have a goal, right? And this was going to bring into a point that I was going to try to say earlier, where there's a very loud conversation going on next to us.
People having fun in San Diego.
Yeah.
Can't fault them. Beautiful city.
It's all good.
Beautiful city.
I just hope my voice comes over it.
They're a little further away from the microphone than you are.
Sounds very loud though.
Some point that you're going to make.
I forgot. So we were talking about toxic masculinity. I don't want to change the fact that men kind of, or most men and women would not change that fact because. Okay, so guys have a goal, and there's a so for guys, having a family is like the goal, right? Like that's a successful guy. Having a family is the epitome of being successful and just providing for that family. For some reason, on the opposite side, feminism has destroyed the family for the woman. Why? Because they're the one being provided for in a traditional sense, or like.
Yeah, I mean, it does definitely seem to be shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and when you try to apply these things in practice, so try to live with a feminist and say, I mean, something as simple as like, I'm not going to put the toilet seat down after I'm done pissing.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, sorry. I just remember my point. Sorry. For a guy, having a woman who loves him and he is the provider for is the ultimate goal. That is what a man is. For a woman, having a family like is a goal. So toxic masculinity, literally, like these women hating men, their goal is to have a woman that respects and loves them and raise a family with them.
That agreed to that agreement where you apply them with the jewelry that I just mentioned. Yeah.
How fucking horrible. Oh man, these pieces of shit. Like what?
Well, yeah. And to continue on the point that I was making, yeah, it's so try to live with a feminist and say, yeah, you can put the toilet seat down on your own damn self.
Right.
You're not going to get a good reaction to that.
Well, it's you know, and you got to clarify with feminism. It's not first, second. I've actually had feminists say, well, most men will say they totally sympathize with first and second wave feminism. Of course we do.
That's because they were fighting for voting rights.
They're fighting for equal rights in a society. Yeah. Which a society... Now, here's the thing. As we said, toxic masculinity, even back, it wasn't really toxic against women, I don't feel. But there was a pet mentality back then, which wasn't good, where you have a woman and you kind of keep her like a little kitten.
Well, watch Mad Men.
Yeah, which goes to our point that we say we don't want a woman like that. We want a fiery, passionate woman who has her own opinions. So, third wave feminism though is about tearing down absolutely everything that a woman is and everything that a man is, and going, it doesn't fucking matter. It's like, no, it does matter, and it's actually really important.
Mm-hmm. Unless you have anything else, I feel like that's actually a pretty good point to wrap on.
Yeah. So next week we will be in
so many places to choose from. Really,
I think we're gonna be in the Philippines. Actually,
really?
Let me check my American Airlines. Let me check my American Airlines ticket.
All right.
Yeah, we're gonna be in the Philippines. That's gonna be awesome, dude. You want some baloo? Some chicken and.
Do they have good beer there?
I think it's like most of the Asian world. The beer is pretty lacking. I
haven't been too impressed with my Sapporos and.
Yeah. I had a Korean IPA. That was not an IPA. Yeah, it's bad.
Anyways, yeah, coming to you live, i.e. pre-recorded from San Diego, the whale's vagina.
Yeah.
This is the Bullshit Buddies. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week. Take care.